wäre schön. Genau. Ja, das Panel heißt Syrien, Berichten unter Lebensgefahr. Ich freue mich, dass wir hier auf dem Podium heute zwei Kollegen aus Syrien sitzen haben, die uns berichten werden aus dem Land, aber auch zwei deutsche Korrespondenten, die Syrien sehr, sehr gut kennen und viele andere arabische Länder auch. Worüber wollen wir heute reden? Ich werde jetzt mal ins Englische überwechseln, damit unsere beiden syrischen Kollegen auch mithören können. I'm going to switch into English now. So what are we going to talk about today? We will talk about the cruelty of a war which is now even spreading out from Syria to Iraq. We are talking about millions of refugees fleeing their country. At least 100,000 people were killed since the beginning of the war in Syria. We will talk about the situation for journalists, where it is almost impossible to get true information and to talk to people and get into the country and report independently. And we will talk about the indifference of the public in the West towards this war and what this means for journalists as well. And I will introduce to you our panelists now. I'm very glad to introduce Majid al-Bouni to you. He's a media activist from Homs in Syria. He's got a bachelor in international relations. Currently, he's finishing his master degree in Istanbul. He lives here in Germany since, I think, December last year, right? October last year. And he had basically to flee his country because he did critical reports, and he was really very much in danger. I was told that you have had a very complicated situation after you left the country. You went to China first, where your brother lived. You went to Malaysia, you went to Turkey, and ended up in Germany now, where you got political asylum. So welcome to Germany, first of all. It's very nice to have you here, Majid.
Thank you.
And we're also very glad to welcome Hussam al-Din from Damascus in Syria. He used to work as a producer and as a freelancer for foreign media. He was getting information mainly about refugees from Iraq. He was helping journalists to get into Iraq from Syria, and that was really difficult for him. He was threatened, and he had to flee his country as well. He went to Turkey, then he came to Germany, where he lives now, and he also got political asylum, and he's working now as a freelance producer and a researcher here in Germany. Welcome, Hussam.
Thanks a lot.
Christoph Reuter is with us today. Most of you will know him probably. He is currently correspondent for Der Spiegel. He's based in Beirut and reporting from there about the Arab world, mainly about Syria and the past 3 years. Christoph Reuter is one of the most experienced war reporters we have in Germany. He worked for print magazines such as Geo, Stern, Die Zeit, and well, he speaks Arabic fluently, I understood. You studied Islamic science. He lived in Afghanistan. He reported very often from Iraq and other countries, and we're very glad that you're with us today and tell us a little bit about the situation in Syria. Christoph Reuter, welcome. Antonia Rados, you already met. Welcome, Antonia. It's very nice to have you here. Although most of you will know you, let me tell a little bit about your background, your professional background. You are a war reporter, I couldn't believe, since 36 years by now, which is really a long, long time. So basically you have been at all the major hotspots we had in the past years where we had crisis and war. You reported from Bosnia, Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, Syria, and many other countries. And since 1995, you're a TV correspondent for RTL. You are a mother of one child, is that correct?
You know more than I do, no.
Oh, Okay, I was reading that. So that was missed. Oh, okay. So it was a fault by one of our colleagues. Let me start asking you, Christoph. You have managed to travel to Syria many times. You were rewarded for this. You have been a Journalist of the Year 2012, I think, because of your brilliant reports. It's a highly dangerous mission in these days to travel to Syria. How is it possible at all to travel through the country, to find people talking to you, to get true information?
Well, partly it's... Is it on? Yeah. Partly it's traveling like maybe in the 17th century during the war, the 30-year war in Europe, that you are moving from village to village on dirt roads, on donkeys, by foot, motorcycles, sometimes disguised, and you move very slowly because each group is, I'm talking about the, let's say, rebel-held, the areas out of the control of the government, meaning the northern provinces reaching until the north of Homs, which is still 200-400 kilometers, and to the east to Deir ez-Zor, where we can't go currently. Each group, civilian activists, rebels, the local councils, is controlling their area, their village, their town, maximum maybe half a province, and with them, through contacts we have established over 3 years now, you have to deal, can we go, can we continue to travel, do you have a car, which ways are safe now, does the regime have, or Hezbollah, or whoever is there fighting on their behalf, do they have installed new checkpoints? Or do they have placed snipers at a certain position which could target us while we are traveling 1.5 kilometers away, etc., etc. So you're basically handed over, like in the Pony Express, from one group to the next, and you travel. So in 2012, going from the Turkish border up to Hula, where the massacre was committed, took place on May 25th, 25 before, it took us 10 days. So by bicycle, under normal circumstances, we would have been faster. 10 days traveling for about 300 kilometers. And if you see the way we took, it's very curvy. Goes around Aleppo, which was under regime control by then, through the industrial zone of Aleppo, then into the desert, then back to Rastan, a city north of Homs, and then very slowly to Hula. That's the way to travel inside. With contacts we have established with people we know, although constantly some of them die, others escape, leave the country, others get mad, others change and become foes after they have been friends, as it happened to our colleague Anthony Lloyd, who was kidnapped and shot by his own Syrian protection team, who had decided, no more friends, now we make money with you. But at least for the western, the northwest, Aleppo, Idlib, the situation for us has improved since January. We can go in again, which was impossible for the overall presence of ISIS, the Islamic State, which was specialized in kidnapping foreign journalists wherever they met them. And they have been kicked out from Idlib and Aleppo until the east of the province. So this is basically the area where we can travel rather freely again, except for the bombs of the Air Force.
Antonia, you just came back from Iraq. It's amazing. If you look at the situation, journalists are being threatened from both sides, basically, from the Assad regime on one side, from jihadists and other rebel groups from the other side. And both sides are inciting journalists very often, as you mentioned in your entry speech, being spy for the other side. So it's really difficult to keep your independent standpoint. What do you do? I mean, is the only thing to really get to join one side, either be on the side of Assad people and be with them and report about this side, and then go to the other side? Or is it possible to really keep your independence?
I think it's very evident that it's extremely difficult because this is a war situation which is very chaotic. This is one thing. And the other thing, I think, which we are living today is that it is moving very, very quickly. That means what was sure a year ago, a month ago, is not happening today. You know, the front can change very much. The situation changes very much. ISIS can get territory, lose territory. Everything goes extremely quickly. And I think we have the impression, journalists, but also the public, it goes very quickly because our problem is we have this enormous amount of information through journalists, through bloggers, through the internet, through contacts. We think we know exactly what is going on in Syria. And it's nearly too much, because at the same time, I think that journalists have this feeling, it's not even a question of being objective. It's a question of being completely helpless, facing a war situation where your power as a journalist is completely gone. We don't even determine anymore, you know, can we decide, do we support Assad or do we not support Assad? So it's not even a question anymore. You have a very fluid, chaotic situation today. You don't have a front, you don't have ideologies anymore. ISIS in Iraq is allied with the tribes, with the Sunni tribes. Assad is allied with Iran, you know. In Egypt, imagine you have a general in power, General Sisi, who is fighting against Islamic groups, but he's allied with Saudi Arabia. So you have so many allies, and I feel very often that I think the chaotic situation is reflected in this very, very confusing reporting we see. We ourselves, I think, do not understand the situations very, very well, even if you go there very often. And I think, let's just mention one thing. Journalism is difficult in this situation. Journalism in the 21st century is very difficult. But the main problem in Syria, I think, is not journalism. The main problem is Western politics, who is not doing anything. And therefore, you know, nothing really moves in the good direction. Western politics is not ready to help anybody. It's not even ready to make humanitarian things. You know, I mean, Christoph knows that, you know, that you go to Syria, every 5 minutes you have a checkpoint, but you also every 5 minutes you have a family who needs help. There's a family who needs a visa. There is somebody who is ill. There is somebody who needs the basic things. So I think you are there and you're completely helpless as a journalist, but you're also helpless because you say, I'm coming from the West. They see and I come there, and nothing is happening in the West.
I find it very remarkable that you said we as journalists, even if we go very often to Syria, don't know really what's going on and understand the situation. How would you judge this, living now in Germany, following the media reports from here? Do you think that we in Germany have a good picture? I'm not saying a true picture, but a good, quite realistic picture of what's going on?
Well, unfortunately, like German policy didn't care so much about Syrian situation. And as you see, when like Ukraine, like the problem, the crisis in Ukraine happened, like all the attention to Ukraine or Egypt or like other side, but the problem about Syria, unfortunately, they don't give big attention about that. And also there's a big note I would like to mention it about what's happened in Syria. Like there's a lot of news agency, they don't send like a professional journalist. they send activists from Syria or something which they are not really well prepared for frontline work, and also the activists, they are not really, to be honest, they are always with one side, with the opposition party, and we would like to have the truth. Even I'm from the opposition, opposition side, but I would like to know, the truth. But the problem also, there's a big issue. There's a lot of Syrian journalists on the land or outside at the border. They don't have a job. They are professional, but they nobody care about them. Nobody try to give them support to teach those activists. But about the German government, only just we are just the members. How many person killed in Syria, and that's it.
Okay, Hussam is talking about a very interesting point, and I would like to ask you the question later on about the fact of how should we in Germany, how should publishing houses and TV stations really deal with the situation? Should they send professional journalists? Should they hire stringers? Should they go just with citizen journalists, as you said? But let me first, Majid, ask you about what is your experience with the local journalists? The local journalists in Syria are much more endangered even than foreign journalists are if they go to Syria. What are your experiences there?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that even with all the dangerous situation that they are facing, but they have no other way but to do that because they want to deliver a message. Otherwise, it's not happening. And now, as you said, now there are many sides. I mean, we started first of all with the annoying from the Syrian regime, but now you have many groups that whatever you say, you will upset. And here we come to a very, very important point in journalism, which is impartiality, which is impossible to be unbiased in Syria, because you will just upset someone, no matter what you do. And this will cause you to be kidnapped, you might be killed, might be arrested, and maybe you don't know, maybe I will just mention it to show you how much it's difficult and dangerous. But only in June, 9 journalists died. 7 died, 9 injured, and 5 being kidnapped by ISIS and Jabhat al-Nusra. The killed ones 6 by Syrian regime, and 1 by ISIS. So you can have this kind of very intensive, very dangerous situation. So, I mean, the only thing to do is just to deliver the message, their voice, and to hide and to make good connection with the brigades, military brigades. You have to praise them maybe sometimes. I mean, this is the only way. I mean, it's not like this utopian world that we are living in, like here.
Yeah, but is this what happens, that most of the journalists are not daring to really say what they really want, but they have a kind of self-censorship and really, just write what the authorities or the rebel groups just want to hear? Or is there a small percentage of journalists who still are trying to really find their tricky ways to...
Of course,
So how do they do this?
Of course, it's just like they keep a certain distance between all sides, I mean, you see sometimes when some regime troops dies, some journalists say thugs died, which is a very extreme word. But when you say like people from the regime died and people from the opposition died, you keep just one way of distance between everybody. It's like whatever, if we want to fight, go fight, but we want to deliver a message about it,
Let me explain that you are now working here in Germany for a internet radio station
And FM.
Yes, it's based in Jordan, it's broadcasting into Syria, and you are kind of cooperating with them and delivering pieces for them from Germany. You doing research means that you are talking to people, to your colleagues, ex-colleagues in Syria.
Exactly.
How do you manage? I mean, we know that the internet in Syria is dramatically controlled by the government. Is there
not anymore. Not anymore.
Not anymore. Okay, but in general, I mean, is it easy for you to get into contact? Are you endangering them?
Yeah.
No.
I mean, it's just that when you want to cover some interview or like live interview, we have to face the problems of electricity more than anything else. Yeah, because you just want to wait the generator to work, which needs oil, which there is no oil in Syria now, or maybe it's with ISIS.
But maybe you should add that there is no such thing as the state internet in large parts of the country. There are alternative two-way satellite phones.
Yeah, exactly.
People are not stupid. They have set up alternative communications all over Aleppo, Idlib, even in Modamia around Damascus. We can Skype, we can chat with people. They have their set phone with a half-hidden antenna somewhere. So it's not the government controlling anything.
Yeah, and just to continue how we cover from Berlin, I mean it's just more charming to my colleagues in Syria when you say that you are in Berlin, one of the richest cities, and they think they are using your position in Berlin, and this is good because I need to introduce myself in this way to grab them and attract them, you know.
Yeah, but that's a good point. To attract people to talk to you is also, on the other hand, a little bit risky maybe sometimes. Maybe, Antonia, you can tell about the fact, how do you protect your sources when you talk to people who really are very critical about certain issues? How do you make sure not to endanger them?
I think it's, of course, a priority to protect your stringer, your translator, and things like this. It's everywhere. It's not only in Syria like that. You have a lot of contacts there. You meet them. I mean, Christoph probably knows more about that because he has been there more often than I was. But you have a lot of contacts on the ground. And with your experience, you try to check if this is a reliable source or not a reliable source. It's a constantly moving floor. You cannot imagine, I think, war reporting in general with fixed rules and something which is in the morning like this and in the evening like this. It's constantly moving. And I think this movement you see all the time in Syria, that you go to a village, you have a guy like Andrew Lloyd, you know, you have a fixer, you work with him for a couple of years, and one morning, because of the situation and the chaos and the changing environment, the guy decides to kidnap you, to make some money out of it. And these things happen. This is war. It is very hard. You cannot, I think, take a lot of principles or a surrounding from Germany and bring it to Syria in this extreme situation. Because it is, in my view, this constantly moving terrain where for all Syrians, but also for the foreigners, I always thought my most difficult thing was to keep my moral compass, you know, to know what I really want there, to understand the big picture. In my view, in my personal view, even after all these years of conflict, like in all conflicts, there are victims, and there are people who have done this. There are people who suffer, and there are people who should go to the war tribunal. In my view, it's very important to remember after all these years who started all that, and this was President Assad. And even if the situation changes a lot, and even if now are radical groups there, we should not forget that in the beginning this was a very democratic and a very moderate movement. People went into the streets to protest against the dictatorship. Now, in the meantime, it has become very, very confusing for us and for everybody. The question I ask myself always, why is it so confusing? And I think we also have citizen journalists, we have foreign journalists, but we also have, in war zones, more than everybody else, I think, I would say PR agencies, who spin and work on the image of somebody like Assad. We had a case like this, They were selling the image of the Assad family before the war in 2000 to a very glossy American magazine, his wife, and so he's a good man, he's a good dictator, and so. The reality is that he's still somebody who is killing massively his own people. And this is very important to remember, I think. It is very important to be a kind of very precise way of saying who is killing, who is doing the killing, who is really bombarding his own people, and who is telling us now that the situation is out of control, whereas he is the one who started it all. This is my opinion, and I always try to remember how this conflict started, because it helps me to understand a lot of things and a lot of anger in the population. I don't know if Christoph sees it's the same thing, or...
Well, what you say is absolutely right. The problem is in Germany as well as in the US and Europe that people are not only not very curious to know what's happening, but they much more like to follow their prejudices, their cliché. If they see somebody bearded, saying Allahu Akbar and carrying a gun, this must be Al-Qaeda, this is a fanatic, this is somebody who's dangerous. If you see the comments on Spiegel Online or wherever, the comments from readers about Syrian rebels, Syrian insurgents, however you want to call them, this is disgusting. This is let them all die, let Allah sort it out, let Assad stay, he will get rid of the terrorists. It's a combination of his constant propaganda efforts, using Christian dignitaries, using nuns, using Russian media, Iranian media, who feed back into agencies about beheaded Christians, desecrated churches, etc., using sometimes pictures from horror movies, as in Kassab in the north, to say this is what happens to Armenians, combined with a readiness to believe all this here. Because Sunni Muslims have the problems since 9/11 and maybe before, constantly feeded by people like Boko Haram, by crazy preachers in London who say the Queen must be veiled in the future. They have a bad image. They don't have a lobby. If you say we are with the Christians, we are secular, etc., no matter if this is an utter lie or not, you have a lobby. You're listening to. And this is the problem with Syria. The people don't even like to listen to what's happening there.
Let me just add one little thing. It's when you try to do research in this zone. For example, I got an information from a journalist who told me there are horrible things happening in northern Syria, where the Islamists are controlling. They're taking out the organs of people and they're selling them. So I thought, being a journalist, I don't really care if this is Assad people or the Islamists. I will do some research on this. So I had somebody in Turkey, a young woman, trying to do research. I had a Syrian who Christoph knows, Yassir. I sent them out. I said, find me the families. I want to know what is going on there, if that is happening. Now, to make a long story short, in the end it came out that there was one photoshopped photo which was the source of it all. We tracked the source back to Lebanon, to a pro-Assad group, and it went back to Damascus, where there was one woman saying her boy had been taking the liver out. But it was impossible to verify who this woman was. It had become in Turkish newspapers. Everybody was talking about it. People were afraid, and all was a big rumor. The moment you try to investigate, basically, I think we probably have a lot of very bad things happening on the Islamist sides. There is no doubt about it. And I think journalists are there to discover also that and talk about it. But I agree with Christoph, the stereotypes we have also to fight against in Syria is black and white. If you have a beard, if you are, you know, if you look different in our world, you cannot be a Democrat. You should look like, you know, a Western guy, then we will believe you. And so whoever goes into the other side and says, look, these are the Islamists doing, they have been doing this, has, I think, a much easier life to do disinformation about the Middle East and about the whole conflict. And the small groups have a lot of...
It just like, it throw the responsibility away, you know? If you just categorize and labelize things that they are only the regime and the extremists, then I don't have any humanitarian responsibility toward that. And the main problem of this is that the extremists are getting stronger. I mean, while the regime is claiming that he's fighting the extremists, they are getting stronger because he's only targeting civilians, actually. I mean, only in June, again, 509 TNT barrel fell on Aleppo only. 28 cluster bombs fell on Aleppo only. You know, but people look at the beards and ISIS and those people who are saying Allahu Akbar and those...
By the way, why do you have a beard?
Because I'm too lazy to shave it.
Okay, but let's talk about the media coverage and how we would be able to really transport these informations. Hussam, you mentioned this interesting point, saying that, criticizing that the foreign media, we, in Germany, for example, are using more and more stringers and citizen journalists to get informations and get pictures. Since it's very difficult to get into Syria, since it's difficult to send your own correspondence, just news agencies mainly are just, you know, phoning local peoples and ask them to bring pictures and bring informations. Why, can you explain a little bit more, why is this dangerous in your eyes?
Well, I know it's very well, it's very hard to work in Syria as a professional journalist inside international one, like foreigners, or it's very high risk, but of course you shouldn't send like activist who doesn't have experience or prepared for that, to work as a frontline correspondent. Just okay, take the camera, take some cash and go bring some pictures or reportage or something like that. This is not really professional. The professional idea, I think, but some Reporter Without Border, they're doing some training for a stringer activist, some journalists. Maybe they can have much better result at the end. But what's happened last month, last 3 months, there's a boy was killed. His name Muad. And he was 17 years old, and he was working with Reuters. So he's a photographer, okay, he has a lot of skills, that sounds good, but he's still a teenager, you know. And to work as a correspondent for Reuters, and then look what look at about his end. It's taking advantage of him. If you would like to help him, maybe you can teach him more, send him to study or something maybe later. But to, just to stand at the border and send those guys who need some cash or who need to show up sometimes or who need to support his idea. For example, he's from the opposition side or whatever. So it's, sorry about that.
No, it's a very good point. And Antonia, it's a dilemma actually, because on one side we know that if we want to raise attention and awareness in Germany towards war, we need pictures. This shows our experience as journalists. sorry, especially in TV, we are really basically forced to bring pictures to show what's going on. On the other hand, it's exactly as you said, Hussam, we don't really want to misuse young people and citizen journalists to bring pictures for us.
That's true, but we also know that our word of pictures is a very superficial word. Because in fact the real crimes and all that are very rarely be shown the moment they happen. It's very rarely, I think Christoph is an exception because you went there to see and talk about the massacres there in Hula, but very rarely we are the ones who discover really the crimes. It's the investigation afterwards, you know, the war tribunals who go there, who get the details, who can talk to the witnesses. Human Rights Watch is doing a lot of work and the good work there in the region. So I think the journalist is always a kind of quite superficial moment that we show in the war. We go there and we make pictures, but we cannot really, I think, go very deep into it. And picture is very tricky. Because on one side, it's of course, especially today, an instant way, giving the public the impression it's there. You know, we participate when pictures from Aleppo is coming. Recently, the BBC went there and made a really incredible reporting. And when you see the pictures, you have the impression you are in front of your television, you are there, which of course incites our curiosity, but also our adversary, our disgust against war. We don't like to see all these pictures, especially when it was going on for 3 years. Pictures are today, I think, even more tricky because they have become a tool of war. They're manipulated. They are used by all sides, I think, to frighten people, but also to show them their victories or whatever there is. So I think pictures are a very tricky thing. We as a public should see them with some distance and not think that this is the full reality. And by the way, you know, in all the studies we have seen, there was an American writer, Susan Sontag, she wrote a book on it, you know, how incredible it is that pictures, in fact, don't really bring empathy for the victims. That we look at pictures and we don't really, you know, it's not an uproar, because otherwise there would have been an uproar already on Syria with all the pictures we have seen. Apparently they can be so manipulated that the same victims are used by all sides. You have bodies there, and people would say, these are our bodies. And then there are others who would say, these are our bodies.
But I have to contradict for a moment this idea that it's impossible to get information, because either you have to send in somebody who risks getting killed, which, by the way, living in Syria, he risks anyhow, or you have to go, but you don't know who's who. We simply have to leave the comfort zone of sitting in an office and assigning, we send someone to talk to some people and get some pictures. That's not the way it works. You have to build up contacts. You have to talk to different people to get a precise account of what happened here, there, then to compare and then to see, okay, does it make sense, or is it a propaganda spin by whomever? I mean, you have activists, they present you lies as well, but you can find out more easily normally. And then...
But how do you find out easily? I mean, this is really a question.
Oh, for example, we had one attempt by some activists and some Free Syrian Army Katiba Brigade to present as someone from the military hospital in Aleppo who said, 2012, I have personally killed about 150 people by injection in the hospital. And then we sold the organs, and the rest of the bodies went to the places of explosions to claim that this was an explosion by some terrorists and there are people of the regime or of the civilians who died. And the other bodies we sell to Iran. And it was, we thought, okay, this is too much. So we have the luxury, we have the ability, as the Spiegel, with money, we can have more than one researcher. We have the time. I concentrate on Syria. So we investigated, okay, military hospital in Aleppo, how can we find people who have worked there or who know people who have worked there or still work there? After 1 month, we had 3 who confirmed the existence of this guy. He was a nurse there. But they could give us very precise claims independently how many people had been killed there, about 3, 5, because it was a small institution, etc., etc., etc. So it was an exaggeration. Or people have been killed, like the 1,700 even in Iraq, which ISIS claims to have killed. So if you have 1,700 soldiers killed, you check with people you know in Najaf, in Basra, in Baghdad, do you have funerals? Do you have mourning ceremonies? Do you have any sign that so many people are suddenly missing? And you had not. So we started to wonder, maybe this is a propaganda spin of ISIS, and the number is much lower, but they want to create the image of cruelty, of killing, etc. But you have to invest effort in research. You cannot assign one person to go somewhere. And then, especially for Syria, then you come to a point when you can find out much more than you can find out elsewhere, because Syria, again, the rebel part, is not a controlled zone. If you are with the Kurds, with the PKK, they assign somebody who's always with you and looks what you do and frightens people to talk to you. If you are in Damascus, you have people who will take care of to whom you talk. Even sometimes you don't know that they are guarding or accompanying you. There's a special unit in military intelligence who's assigned 4 important foreign journalists. So they make clear, they make sure that you get the picture they want you to get from A to Z. But if you travel in the rebel areas, everybody is speaking out and cursing about the other group, about this Katiba, about them. After 1, 2, 3 weeks, you know basically everything. And then the only question is, what can you report by quoting people without risking them? But we get all the details, how the rebels are selling or controlling the smuggling of food to make money, to sell it for increased prices, how they deal with regime soldiers in this kind of food smuggling mafia, that probably the most important human rights lawyer, Razan Zaitouneh, was kidnapped by some Islamist Katiba after she constantly criticized them. You find out a lot, because people talk. But you have to invest time, people, money to stay and to try to find out, okay, what is really happening here?
But not many foreign medias are really investing so much money, either if they don't have it or maybe they don't want it, you know, they don't see the necessity. How would you judge, Majid, the work of foreign journalists in these days in Syria? I mean, is it, what Christoph said is basically the ideal situation of doing research, but how is it in general? What would you say?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, they should more focus on linking themselves with the locals and give them the amount of care that they deserve. I mean, because, I mean, this man that just to stand for 6, 7 hours just to take a shot of a barrel going from up to down, and this barrel might get on him, he deserves some kind of attention, you know? So in a way or another, they should like at least provide more equipment, provide more money, provide more security. And this is, I mean, like I'm working with MICT now, it's Media and Cooperation and Transition. And the first thing that we ask about how we can secure you, I mean, even, and please.
You mean secure you physically?
Yeah, exactly,
yes.
Exactly. I mean, because, I mean, we are setting transmitters, FM transmitters, and it should be at least 500 meters away from civilians, because obviously transmitters are more targeted than military targets nowadays and always. But I mean, all in all, again, it's, in my opinion, it's not more about journalism as much, or the work about the foreign journalists as much as about the decision makers, because I always told people it's not about what are the solutions, but who want to do the solutions, who want to implement these solutions that everybody is presenting, either foreign journalists, either the people, either amateur media activists. I mean, it's obvious what is happening. I mean, you can know. I mean, let me give you a secret. If you want to know everything about ISIS, just to create an account on Twitter, and follow them. They are all there, all there. And if, sorry to say that, even if they fart, they say, we farted. Really, I mean, because I'm following every soldier of ISIS, not because I love them, but because you have to know what is happening. It's your country, you have to know where are they, you have to know what they are doing, because as Mr. Christoph said, sometimes they use propaganda to scare others. And our job as journalists to show the truth and to reach, to deliver the voice of the voiceless.
Christoph, you did a very unusual step. You left your position as an independent reporter, and you set up a public letter at the end of last year, asking for help for the Syrian people. And just to give those of you who did read it a short imagination, I want to quote one or two sentences and then translate it to you into English. Also Christoph Reuter hat einen öffentlichen Brief geschrieben und der beginnt mit den Worten: Ich habe ziemlich viel gesehen in den letzten 20 Jahren, so viel Irrsinn, Gaza, Irak, Afghanistan, Libyen, aber so etwas Grausames wie jetzt in Syrien habe ich noch nie erlebt. Alle paar Wochen stirbt jemand von denen, die wir kennen, und das sind nicht die Kämpfer, sondern jene, mit denen wir zu tun haben. Die Helfer bei den Fahrten durchs Land, die Leute der lokalen Räte, die Ärzte, die Logistiker, die Journalisten, die ganz normalen Menschen, die versuchen, ihr Land zu retten gegen die Vernichtung durch dessen Regierung. So he basically wrote in this letter, he was experiencing a lot of wars, but the war in Syria is the most cruel he has seen, and he sees that all the people he met, or a lot of people he met and worked with, are dying or kidnapped or whatever, and he's asking for help, for, you know, really financial help for people in Syria. So why did you decide to leave your position as a journalist in this case?
Because I didn't leave it for good. No, you have to, I mean, working in such an environment where you see, as Antonia said, people rising against the dictatorship, claiming we want justice. We want to live in a normal state where we don't have to bribe everybody, where we are not thrown into prison if we dare to speak out against the regime, the family who claims to own this country like a personal fiefdom. And I think this cause is just. It's a just cause to stand up against the dictatorship. So, related to this cause, I thought it is deeply unfair what's happening to the Syrians, in particular the ones who have the bad luck of living in Aleppo, of living in a place which is constantly bombed, or being doctors which are specifically targeted. If you are caught at the checkpoint of the government with bandages, they kill you. If you have syringes with you, any medical equipment, they kill you. Because this is one of the most heinous crimes in their eyes, to give medical treatment to the terrorists. But this does not touch or change the reporting. The reporting we do, this is why we try to go in all the time, and we try to focus on things that happen, on things where we can do our own research, we can claim what we saw with our own eyes, not generalizing they are bad and they are good, but as we did the investigation about the massacre or the investigation about prisoners with the rebels, what precisely is happening? What have we from this source, from this source, from this source? How many people got killed here? Can we see the graves? Did we do investigative research and present to the audience what happened, what we can, as good as we could do the research, claim, present, and then they can make up their own mind. So I think that's okay, and I felt the necessity at least once to say, hey, wake up. We should not, as Hayo Friedrich said, we should not party even with a good cause as journalists, but the problem is nobody is listening to what's happening in Syria. You have all the barrel bombs on Aleppo the last months, as Majid said. Nobody reports about it. Not even we did it, because everybody was in Iraq. Nobody cares. So it was a little wake-up call.
Hussam, would you join Christoph saying that at one point you have to leave your independent standpoint as a journalist?
Well, I agree with him actually, and I realized by my simple experience that many, even not only the media, like agency, even like research centers which advise the governments everywhere. I have many students there in France, in Germany, in UK. Everybody advise help Syria, we should help Syria. But I think the politician doesn't want that. And I agree with Christoph actually.
Okay, regarding to the time, I really don't know exactly what time we're supposed to finish this session now. When did we start? 1:45 or wann haben wir angefangen? Noch 5 Minuten? Okay, ich krieg gerade ein Zeichen. Wir haben das. Okay, if you want to. Sure, I see there's a microphone. Okay, so then we still have some minutes left. If you have questions towards the panelists, please come and do you have a question? Aha.
May I just
yeah.
add something which I think what Christoph did was not leaving a position as a reporter. It was stating the obvious, because this is a rule, I think, which you have always when you're reporting about conflict. You're always on the side of the weak. You are not defending the strong, and in this case, President Assad is a strong because he has an air force, he has an army, he has a lot of allies, whereas the Syrian opposition is not. So I think one of the principles we are simply following when you report on Syria is that you listen to the weak and you try to give them a voice. That is our main thing, I think, when you go to a war zone, is to give people a voice which don't have a voice. And the other thing is, I think also which here people don't really understand, or it's difficult for them to understand, is that people are very happy when we come. Wherever you go into a war zone in Syria and you come as a foreign reporter, people are relieved because they have so much the impression that the world has forgotten them, that they're very happy that somebody comes and says, tell me your story, we want to listen to you. You are weak, you have nothing, you have lost everything, but a reporter is there to give you a voice which otherwise will not be heard in the noise of the weapons. And I think, therefore, leaving your position, not leaving your position, this principle, in my view, will always be there and should be also kept in this conflict, which is, let's not forget, this is the bloodiest conflict since the Second World War. This is the biggest humanitarian catastrophe since the Second World War. And I think we should remember this. It should not happen in the 21st century.
Are there any questions, any remarks? Well, if not, I would put one last question to Majid. Majid, there are so many young people here in the audience, students of journalism and young journalists. What kind of advice would you give them when they want to go as a foreign reporter into war zones or into crisis regions?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, if you want to do it for being famous, don't. If you want to do it for tourism, because there's something called the crisis tourism, that just they go to take pictures and yeah, we are with the poor people and we are just helping them, and don't. If you like it, if you feel it deserves it, just do it. And second thing, don't only lean on what you hear or even inside. Always check many sources as you can. Twitter, Facebook, Skype, talk to people, listen to them, and then make up your mind. Don't just, I mean, I am semi-journalist. I'm not really a journalist. I've been lately a journalist, but don't be so protocolic to these limitations of journalism. I mean, at the end, make a report, make a journalistic good report, but don't limit yourself with these limitations of journalism that I always fight. And maybe now they hate me now. I don't know.
No. That was a very good last remark. But we have one question and the lady standing there. So one quick question, please, and then we must finish.
Ms. Radas, why shouldn't this happen in the 21st century? What about the 21st century means that this kind of conflict shouldn't happen?
Well, what I mean is that we have seen a lot of genocides, and that we think, at least in our societies in the West, that societies is progressing. And it's not only progressing in the technological way, but also in the way of more democracy, a different democracy. And I think none of us would have imagined that something like Syria can happen in the 21st century, that people are dying, we don't look there. We have had that in Rwanda, we have had that in Srebrenica, if you remember. Journalism is not enough to report on something like Syria. More is needed than that. We need politicians, we need NGOs, everybody, every effort should be done to at least, I don't think we can prevent it, but to at least know what is going on. We know everything today. We know what is happening, you know, if a star in China has a new film, we know about it. And how come that we don't know really what is going on in Syria, and if we know it, we don't look there? I think we do have, that is my opinion, we do have a certain responsibility in the 21st century. We cannot say we didn't get the information, you know, nobody was there, we have these activists, they're giving everything. So it should not happen.
So thank you very much to all of you. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for sharing your experience, your view, and good luck to both of you especially. Thank you very much. One last hint I have for those of you who would like to get more information about Syria and the conflict in this region. If you go to the homepage of Reporters Without Borders, you can find an update about the situation in Syria, and you find a great analysis about the uprising in the Arab world as well. Have a nice day.